Today we are presenting on outreach and media, and I am coming to you today from Karuk Land in Northern California on the Klamath River. With that, I want to move into the subject matter for today, which I think is critically important, although not always the most celebrated of the subjects that we deal with, which is creating media and outreach related to water protection campaigns. We're really excited today that we have Ali Hostler from the Two Rivers Tribune, and that we have Teria Smith from News from Native California joining us by phone due to a roving blackout in her area. So I'm going to start with a short presentation, kind of just talking about what is media and outreach and how do you go about it and how do you go about sharing your story and being a speaker on your issues. It might take me just 1 second to share my screen. All right. Well, today we're talking about outreach and media as it relates to water protection in California. I'm sorry, I don't know why it's not skipping. Oh, there we go. There are many different ways that you can share your story. There's print media, there's video media, there's social media, radio and podcasts, art, and self-published media. Print media includes weekly or daily newspapers and magazines. TV media includes nightly news, more full-length shows like in-depth journalism and documentaries. And of course, radio can be community radio, more mainstream radio, or do-it-yourself radio like podcasts. One thing that I think that's really important to remember is that there's many different ways to share your story and not just one. There's also many ways, like I said, to create DIY or do-it-yourself media. That can include creating flyers and publication, writing your own articles, creating websites, creating petitions and action alerts, making professional videos and documentaries, or making your own action videos, just live, low-quality videos on your phone. There's also creating and sharing educational materials. Remember, educating each other is part of outreach. And you can also host events and meetings. There's also direct outreach, which is like working within your community, in-person, one-on-one meetings. If people have other ways that they feel like are ways to outreach to your communities and you want to drop them in the chat right now, feel free to do that, because I know there are just so many ways that we can share our stories with each other. The most important thing to remember when you're doing media is to be prepared, to keep it simple, and to communicate very clearly. A lot of us are really into our issues and we can present them in a very complex way where we can kind of assume that the audience knows what we're talking about. And I've had to talk with some of our youth doing media about the fact that some people in California don't even have rivers near them or know what a river is. So it's just really important to be very clear and concise, but also to not assume that your audience is coming from a place where they know anything at all about your issue. So while you're thinking about this, think, how do you communicate your issue in an easy to understand way? How does your communication impact your community? What are the facts and what decisions are being made that you're trying to relay to your audience? What are you asking your audience to do? Who are impacted and who are the spokespeople and communicators that you want to make sure are part of this story? Who are the adversaries or people working against you? Have you studied your adversaries' points and counter arguments? And what, like as a short example, say, would be, we've worked really hard to share how important the rivers are in our communities. And we've constantly had to go back against people like the Westlands Water District, who put out a narrative that they're feeding America and that we are environmentalists getting in their way. But really, it's not, it's not rivers versus farmers or fish versus food, because fish are food in our community, and the rivers feed people, and the rivers are places where we get our drinking water from. So it's really good to think about how you communicate these things, but also how the people who might communicate from the other side are planning to communicate, because if you can deal with their talking points before they say them, it really helps change the narrative. It's also good to remember that not everyone is good at everything, but everyone has something to add. Not all of us can do public speaking, and not all of us can write. So that's why it's so good when we work within teams and community. I know I rely a lot on more professional writers to help me with my writing, and I know people who rely on me to help them with their public speaking. So it's just really good to help each other and to not try to push people into things that they don't feel ready for. So now we're going to go in really quickly because I think Ali and Taria will talk about it more. Press releases, advisories, and statements. This is how you get your word out to a more mainstream audience, such as newspapers or TV stations. So when dealing with the mainstream media, the main way you get your issue out in front of a reporter is by issuing press releases, statements, and advisories. These need to be timely and focused around an event or a decision or something that is happening right now in order for your story to get covered. You need to cover who, what, where, and why in both the release and the advisory. The news moves very fast, so it's good to have statements and press releases ready if you're expecting a decision or an event. You can always change it quickly if it's not the decision you expected. If you do not want to engage the other side, oh, I'm sorry, I don't know why. Oh, sorry, you will have to engage the other side, but it's important to realize how overworked reporters are. And that if the other side puts out a press release and you do not, or you do not call reporters when there's a decision being made, they're very overworked and they're probably not going to call you. So it's important to make sure to contact the media to do your press release, statement, or advisories, and to include clear titles, information, and contact information. First, research your press contacts and create a contact list. Press advisories will be short, less than a page, and they're usually released several days ahead of time before your event or before you're expecting a decision. That way the media knows to expect to hear from you, and it's good to give them a call for a heads up too. Press releases are longer, maybe 1 to 1.5 pages, and they will include quotes from impacted people and help tell your story. Press statements are usually just a quote that deals with what you want to be put in a story based on someone else's press release. So a situation that would happen is, say, your local congressman puts out a press release saying that they made a decision related to an issue that impacts you. Then you might want to just put out a short 1-paragraph statement. These are some examples of press releases. This is the press release we did for the July for the series. As you can see, we have contact information, where we are, what we're doing, a couple quotes, and then a schedule. All press releases are different, but this could be considered a template. Then we have opinions, editorials, and LTEs. Opinion is about 500 to 700 words long, and it covers an issue that is important to the publication or deals with the story. These should come from well-known or impacted people and tell their story. This does not have to cover the other side, and it has to be factual, but you're allowed to insert how you feel in it. And it's important to do that. A letter to the editor is about 150 to 200 words long and also deals with current events, but it's a lot easier to get published. And an editorial will come from the publication themselves. Editorials and opinions are preferred by some very overworked news outlets. However, they're not always easy to get. As with press releases and reporters, you need to meet with the reporters or the editorial board, educate them, and talk with them as much as possible. Getting a meeting is really a good thing if you can get a meeting with an editorial board, because an editorial is probably the most impactful and hard to accomplish of these three. But if the LA Times puts out an editorial saying that the Klamath Dam should be removed, it's going to have a lot more impact than if Save California Salmon does. So then we can get into press conferences, interviews, and public speaking. If you're going to be doing a press conference or a rally, make sure to bring a press packet or your press release, and make sure to send a press advisory beforehand so that they know that this is happening. The reporters know this is happening. Make sure to assign appropriate speakers that speak to the issues at hand. I've seen quite a few press like press conferences and rallies where random people just start talking, and that could be the clip that gets played on the news. So you're really going to want people to be controlling your microphone in these situations because you don't want to look crazy. Make sure that you assign a press liaison, which would be the person going up to the person with the video camera and saying, hey, do you want to do any interviews? Do you know what's happening today? But that's not necessarily the person doing the interviews because you don't want to have one person to have too many tasks. Make sure you know your talking points. Don't get off your talking points. Practice a lot. Don't get thrown off your game, but if you do, keep going. It's okay to say you're sorry and just keep going. It's also good to know, especially when you're getting interviewed, it's okay to not answer a question, and it's okay to say that you don't know something. An example, when we do these in person, which we can't do on Zoom, we do practicing. So maybe I would ask someone a question like, well, why do you want to shut down farms in California? And then my answer would be, we don't. We think we think farms and rivers can coexist. But the fact is, salmon are food in our communities, and we're here to speak for our communities, and then turn it back to your talking points. You don't have to go down a rabbit hole of someone else's issues, especially if it's an unsympathetic reporter, because if you say something mean or confusing, that could be what they play. Oops. So these are examples of pages of talking points. And it's important if you're working on an issue and you're helping do a press conference that you make sure that the people who might speak know the talking points. And it's also important that random people know the talking points too, because sometimes the reporters will go right up to them and be like, tell me about the issue. And it's really important that everyone there knows who your media spokespeople are and can bring the reporters to them, and that you have that person who is supposed to be the media liaison. But things can go wrong. So you want everyone there to be fairly educated, especially because a lot of our rallies or press conferences are right before public comment periods. And, we want to make sure everyone knows what the issues are and understands them. Sometimes stories work out the way you want, and sometimes they don't. Breaking down false narratives is part of doing media. And also, the media work is not done once the story is printed. So even if you get a story you don't like, you can call that reporter and educate them and let them know why that story might not be accurate or might not show all of the different points of view, because that reporter might still be there next time something happens. And if they understand the issue better, then that's a good thing to know. And it's all learning experiences, learning what the other side might say or the way that things could get covered poorly. It's good. So these are 3 examples. One is the salmon showdown in Indians versus fishermen. That is not the way that we usually want our stories to be covered. We want a bigger pie, not everyone fighting over the last salmon. So that's something that's, we worked really hard to build alliances to say, no, we want more salmon. We don't want to fight over them. But it's sensational, the way to cover the story. So this could happen, and it's good to know, and it's good to think about it beforehand. Another one, I'm actually in this article, which is funny, but State Board cuts water supply for California homes and farms. What actually happened in this situation is the State Board voted to provide more flows for salmon during certain times of year. So this is like an example, and this was on the Weather Channel webpage. So this was an extremely popular national story, and an example of the story was a little better, but the headline was very sensational, and it made us look pretty bad as people fighting for our rivers, like we were trying to steal water from people's homes. And then this one, the last one, is an example of a really well done opinion, saying exactly what we wanted to say at the time. And that's that Governor Newsom should do more than just apologize to Native people. He should actually work to help restore their lands and to restore their salmon runs. So yeah, there's lots of different ways this could all play out, is the point of that. And it's always a good idea to create your own media, because truthfully, that's the only way you're going to be covered the way you want to be covered. And people get pretty excited about media that's covered the way they want to see. Unfortunately, I accidentally cut off one of these flyers, but write your own stories and shop it around to publications. You'll be hearing later on very soon on what newspapers want to see when you write a story. Create your own publication, create your own memes, social media posts. We will also be talking about that today. Make and share videos. You can also consider paid placements or ads if there's someone particular you're trying to get to. I mean, that's the other side does that a lot. So it's okay for us to think about that too, if we can make enough money to do it. And always remember to share knowledge, respect each other's skills, and help each other.